we're gonna roll this.
Okay.
Cool.
But I was impressed, you know.
Oh, okay, we're super organized.
I know, really.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's so wonderful to see you all this morning. Really appreciate it, especially coming out on such a beautiful day. Very much appreciate it. Hopefully we'll have an informative discussion, and you've got some good panelists here to talk about a little bit about what's going on, how is touring and performing live in general and booking shows changed since COVID. When I started writing this, I was tempted to say post-COVID, but we all know masks. We all know that we are not post-COVID. Maybe we never will be. So what does the new normal look like in the touring world? What's different now? I know I'm by the way, Grossman. I'm an agent now with Fleming Artists. I used to own a company called Green Room Music Source, which was a booking agency management company for about 14 years. I'm asking my old partner, David. Remember anymore? Yeah, a long time. And we merged under David's direction with Fleming Artists at the very end of 2020, because of course we were doing a lot of work in the booking world in 2020. I'm also an educator. I've been teaching adjunct faculty with the Institute of Production and Recording in downtown Minneapolis, it's the Medina campus, for about 17 years. And so I've got that background as well. And I put together this wonderful panel. I'm really excited to introduce you to these. I'm going to start down here with Jessica Paxton, who is currently the talent buyer for an amazing place called Parkway Theater in South Minneapolis, 48th and, well, roughly
48th and
Chicago. Yeah, a little bit south there. Jessica, I'm going to do my cheat sheet here a little bit to get your background going. You've been there since 2018?
Since they reopened under new management in September 2018. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Jessica's background, she worked in for a long time at KYMN Radio in Northfield, about 13 years, and built a reputation for a lot of power pop, passion for supporting lots of Minnesota music, and had hosted lots of in-studio performances and all that stuff. And so she really developed a great relationship, in my opinion, from looking from the outside, with Minnesota musicians. And I've seen that in action the other night. I saw that when we were talking to the trailer trash people. She is also now on the air randomly at 89.3 current. I asked her the other day when I couldn't hear her, she said, I don't know.
I'm on today.
You don't want me to listen? Yeah. So look, check for her there. She's fairly new to that team, but she is on the air there. So she's doing radio again, which is great. Mary Brabec is a dear friend as well, who is now currently at the Cedar Cultural Center as the booking director, would be the official title, talent buyer. Mary and I really bonded because she was an agent for a long time. She worked at Billions. She had a small agency that merged with Billions for a long time. Also, you've done a lot of work, kind of and just generally like helping out. Yeah, bumper shoot, starting that, any of those things. So very happy to have your angle on this. I don't think I need to read a cheat sheet to introduce this guy, a good friend of mine, David Priebe, who helped me for many years as a managing partner at the aforementioned Green Room Music Source. David did a lot of booking, but he also held down the fort a lot with artist management. He joined me, and like I said, actually helped broker us to merge with Fleming Artists, which is technically based out of Michigan, at the end of 2020, but soon after decided to go back on his own, and he has started his own boutique agency called Family Self, which who locally are you booking? You've got you've got Aaron McHugh, and I know, but I'm trying to use local. But no, I know, but I mean otherwise. You're not making this any easier.
I know, I'm sorry. So
Yes, Mary
Jennifer Knapp, Mary View, Faith Poplett locally. Maudlin.
Oh yes, yeah.
This great power pop band that's, really underappreciated band that's been around for forever. You guys know.
We are going to be joined by Terrell Woods, who's known as Carnage the Executioner. I wanted to have one musician that has had some touring experience since COVID began, so he'll be joining us. He just sent me, and that's why I was really looking at my phone. He's trying to park right So he'll be here soon, and a quick introduction to him, because I wanted to get his energy as well.
I'm surprised that wasn't me.
Yeah, it could have been, exactly. So anyway, we're gonna try to open this up to questions towards the end. I think we have until noon, right? Until noon? Yeah. So we'll keep watching for that. I am going to ask Jessica the first question here. I wanted to kind of open this conversation up. What is it like? I know, Jessica. What was it like transitioning from booking national artists to having to hold off after, of course, March of 2020 when everything went down, and focusing more on local artists for the band?
So I have to say, when you sent me this question, I thought, I know what you're going for answer-wise, and actually the opposite was true. So when the Parkway Theater, I'm actually the programming manager. So we do comedy, we do author events, we do movies, we do podcasts, we do everything, and we do live music. And so I'm programming a lot of different stuff. So for us, when COVID shut everything down, I mean, my personal passion is live music. And so, you know, that's the thing I'm always most excited to book. But what we found was that, you know, there were certain things we could still continue to do because it didn't require a full band, or it didn't require, you know, multiple people on stage. So we were still able to do, we were also able to do things at smaller capacity. But getting back to your original question, you know, everything shut down. There was a period of, I don't know, a year where we were doing rentals, some live stream events occasionally, but that came with a whole, you know, production cost that was out of control. And, you know, then you're figuring out how do you pay the artist, but also pay for a tech team to come in who's also trying to make a living because they're unemployed now because of COVID. So, and then we also did virtual cinema for a while too, in an effort to try to make money. But what we found when people did start to tour again was it was actually the national bands that were really eager to get back on the road and do those makeup dates. And it was the local artists that were like, I'm gonna hold off, I'm gonna wait. I'm not really comfortable performing right now. And so really it was kind of the reverse for me at least. And I'm still kind of feeling that. Like I feel like when a national artist has a show booked, it's part of a broader tour. And so if they cancel one show, they're pretty much canceling the entire tour. A local artist, and I'll be interested in your opinion here, and this isn't true, you know, it's not my, I can't get in their headset or whatever, but there wasn't that same sense of urgency to get back out on the road. I think local artists were eager to perform and get out and practice their craft, but they could play in someone's backyard. They could do, you know, a house concert. They could do, more likely do live stream that maybe was less produced. So maybe on Facebook Live. So really that's what I found. And even now, because as you said, COVID has not gone away. I mean, I've had shows that will be on the books for months with local artists and they'll pull the plug because they're concerned about COVID. A national band would not do that. But the other part of it is like a national band I have also found is, or a national artist is going to be more likely to have COVID protocol in place. And so when those shows are being booked, COVID is discussed up front. What is your venue's policy? How do you handle this? Will you do this? I will say the Parkway, we have a policy in place where you have to show proof of vaccination or proof of a negative COVID result from a test within 72 hours to enter the building. Masks are no longer required, but they are strongly encouraged. But if an artist comes through and they say, we want masks required, we want vaccination proof required, I mean, we will follow whatever the artist mandates. But anyway, that does tend to come more from the artist or the management, and that's something that certainly we're accommodating as we go along. But people will say, I mean, I'm booking shows into 2023, and people will say, well, what's your COVID policy? And it's like, I can tell them what it is now. I don't know what it's going to be in February. I don't know what it's going to be like in August. And we do now on all of our contracts have COVID-related cancellation language. So any date is contingent on whatever the pandemic protocol might be on that date. And that's part of our new normal.
We're seeing that in contracts all the time. Absolutely. I mean, it only makes sense, right? Okay, that is part of the normal. And don't think that's gonna go away because everybody, for a long time, we don't know when this is gonna end, or what does that even mean? What is it?
I think this is our new normal.
Yeah.
You know, and we're all collectively figuring it out on a regular basis. I think venues, agencies, bookers, but also artists, you know, we're all still navigating this.
What is the current Parkways policy? In
So,
its ever-changing way.
well, so like I just said, it's so we have a vax checker at the door. We have a new staff person who checks vaccination cards. If you don't have your vaccination card, there's actually an app. You can download it from the state of Minnesota. Or we require, like I said, proof of a negative test. As of today, we're actually not publicizing this, but hey, what the heck? Now it's gonna be on the internet.
Oh, okay.
As of today, we're lifting that policy. So we are no longer requiring proof of vaccination. We're getting a lot of pushback. It's really interesting how initially, when we had our COVID policy in place, people were, thank you, thank you, thank you. I feel so much more comfortable now if you're doing this. We have found that as COVID levels have gone down, we're getting a lot of pushback, not only from audiences, but also from artists. We've kept our policy in place because we feel like it's the respectful, smart, scientific thing to do. We're still going to be strongly encouraging mask wearing. But like I said, so when the front of house staff made the decision that we're going to lift our COVID policy and it's no longer going to be required to show proof of vaccination, as the programming manager, I said, well, you can't do that until I have a chance to contact everyone who's on our calendar to see how they feel about this. Or anyone who's already purchased a ticket, thinking, well, I'm going to this venue where I know they have this policy in place. So technically, as of today, we're no longer requiring it, but anything that's on the books right now will still have that policy.
Okay.
But I then, you know, you mentioned trailer trash. I emailed them, you know, we're thinking about, so the local band, we're considering lifting this policy. What do you think of this? Would you still play? We have a show tonight that is probably going to be drawing a older demographic. You know, I was concerned about that. Like, I want to know what these musicians think and feel, because there's definitely an impact there. And there's also that sense of trust. So point being, we are, as of today, lifting that policy, but it's going to remain in place for anything that was already on the books.
Interesting.
But that isn't to say that it'll, you know, what's going to happen 30 days from now.
Right. Right. I remember when I started getting those emails saying, hey, how are your artists feel about us lifting our, shows that are existing? And you're just like, oh no, it's another layer. My anxiety just
Totally.
went
Oh,
up.
yeah.
I go back again. I mean, the amount of communication, it's probably not all a bad thing that we've had to do extra communication with our artists in the last 2.5 years, whatever.
Absolutely.
It's just been amazing.
Yeah, no, and that's actually a really good point,
Yeah.
because it was the front of house staff that made that decision, and I was like, you have no understanding of what I
Cannot
do.
do it. Exactly.
Because this isn't just a decision that can be made,
Yeah.
it's gonna require so much messaging and communication. And like you said, the back and forth emails that programmers and talent buyers have with artists and agencies, because everybody does want to feel well-served, everybody does want to feel like all their questions have been answered, everybody wants to feel comfortable being back out on the road and being in a particular venue. And so a lot of communication is just establishing that relationship and reassuring people that, yes, we care about you. We care about our artists, we care about our audiences.
I bet everyone on this panel has experienced this. I had something I hadn't even thought of early on. When artists were starting to go back out into the touring world, they were concerned about not as much, I mean, sure, their own safety, but more about they're going to be on stage singing with no mask on. And how far back will the audience be, whatever. They're worried about the chances of giving someone, obviously they're not going to go out if they know they have COVID, but with this whole thing, like, sneaking up on us all the time, what is their responsibility? I wanted to do a proper introduction, Carnage, but I would like to ask you that question, because you've been on the road since pandemic times. Was that ever a concern for you?
I was more concerned about, being in places where a lot of people were giving it to each other. you know, I felt like I was pretty cautious during that time. And I was one of the people who actually stayed home and didn't complain about it. But I felt like, you know, people saying, oh, we miss live music, and you know how that goes. Everybody misses live music when they don't have it, but when they have it, they don't go.
Right. Yeah, that's a great way to.
Sad but true.
Yeah.
But so, you know, I'm just kind of started weighing that whole, you know, narrative that people were throwing out about, I can't wait to get to shows. I can't wait. So my concern started being like, how many people are going to be in a building together who are passing it to each other?
Right.
You know, I didn't feel like I was as vulnerable myself. It's like I'll be on stage, kind of in the back, and you know, I take my vitamins and I'm vaccinated, and I try to be healthy, so I wasn't as worried about myself. I was worried about people giving it to each other.
Yeah, and that's what I mean with that. What is your responsibility for that? Like,
I just didn't go.
yeah, exactly.
I didn't do a lot of stuff for a while.
Well, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you because Carnage Executioner, if you're not familiar, great human beatboxer, wonderful local artist, one of my favorite artists, and also a very, you know, an educational component to your brand, a big one. When you going out there now, you've done some educational things in Minnesota and maybe everywhere. Yeah, I mean, since all this stuff, is this coming into the discussion when you're talking to young students? Are you talking more about COVID and what this means for the world now?
I am.
An automatic thing?
You know, and I had to get some things for myself. I bought a trumpet screen to put around my microphone.
Sure.
So I could still, you know, because there were places that wanted to hire me, but they were like, beatboxing is probably the thing we really should have.
Probably not
A
the
lot of
greatest
spit flying around. So I did a little bit of research and I found the trumpet screen, and I didn't even really, you know, I'd seen them, but I didn't really know exactly what was up with them. And then I got one and I put it around my mic, and I was able to do like 3 or 4 gigs that I wouldn't have been able to do had I not did a little bit of research and got that. So, you know, I've just been telling people, you know, be prepared for the new norm. And, you know, where everybody's talking about like, oh, we want to take it back to the way it was. And I say, well, go forward. Why go back to what it was when there's a new norm? Why don't you build?
I love that. Yeah.
You know, build on what is here now and do what you need to do in order to, you know, not only, you know, sustain a living for yourself and be safe for yourself, but provide, you know, ideas and services and you know, different plans for other people to follow. I mean, I feel like we as veteran artists, especially us with gray in our hair and our beards, we owe it to the people who listen to us to tell them, you know, tell them what we know, because a lot of them are just coming up. I still know so many artists who don't even have their own microphones. It's like, you needed them back then. Now you really times 25 need your own microphone. And it's still, it's kind of almost depressing to watch people just still like show up and let me get that, you know, that sound man's mic from the dive bar that has, you know, dents and holes and rust and it, you know, smells like a fish cookout. And these people, like, they're just happy to get on those mics, and I'm just like, no.
Have you seen the mic condoms?
Yeah, I have like.
I think that's what they're really called. I'm not.
That's
trying-
what I call
I'm not trying to be funny, right?
That's actually what I
They had them
I
at
just
local
was
lines.
a mic in his armpit and kind of hold it while he was doing something else.
Well, I mean, obviously, you know, a lot of touring artists, of course, out of practice, you go back there, there's this whole new world. Everybody in this live world is trying to figure out what's our role, what do we do? More, I mentioned earlier, more communication has to happen. I mean, it's crazy. David, I wanted to ask you, because in the midst of all of this, not that long ago, you decided to start an agency. Which having done that before, I find to be very brave and admirable.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's that like? You know, what's the challenge?
The reasoning though is just mostly because I'm not that bright.
I bet it is.
You know, I was thinking about this question on the drive over, as I promised I would. Wait until I was on the way here.
I sent them the questions ahead of time, even though I'm veering off a little bit.
And I think for me, the thing that I've noticed that's changed most is just kind of our culture since the pandemic and people's attitudes. And there's some really cool things happening in terms of people really admiring transparency and forwardness and honesty. Anti-gatekeeping is a big thing now.
Interesting.
And
Can you explain that a second? I just want to make sure everybody understands what you mean by that, including me. I think I do. Anti-gatekeeping. I mean, in context.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really important phrase.
I always think of Ryan Smith from the Melismatic Soul Asylum, who many of you guys may know, because he was the first person I really experienced this as a musician to musician. I'm also a musician, and you meet other people, other musicians who are further along in your career, and you have all these questions. How did you do this? How did you do that? And he was the first person who would just like point blank, I talked to this guy, here's how you get a hold of him. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow. And I actually, I run this little series, the Show and Tell, and where I have performers come on and I interview them, and I asked them about that. And his parents are educators. And so he has that kind of educator thing, and you're an educator, I'm an educator. So we have that kind of attitude where people have questions and we're like, oh, sure, here's what you do. But for many, 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 many years, all of the music industry, up until maybe now, that hasn't been the way. It's been you find the secret, you find the thing, and you keep it so that you can get ahead, and you don't.
That's a great point.
You don't want to give that tip to somebody else because it took you so long to get there, you know? And that attitude, I feel like, is really changing, where people are realizing the moral issue with that. It's just not right, you know? And I think a lot of people, as always, people like the old guard and the labels are going to be way behind this curve again. They're not going to adapt to that. And with, people coming up on TikTok now and things like that, how people are just, everything is raw and genuine and straightforward. I think that's going to be a paradigm shift that we're going to see in the coming years. And I wanted to really lean into that when I started this agency.
Cool. Mary, I might throw a little curveball at you.
Okay.
I hope it's okay. Well, because you're poking at a really unique venue, in my opinion, the Cedar Cultural Center. If you're not familiar, always been one of my favorite listening rooms. This is not a destination room. I don't know if that's the right term. Like, this is not a room you just hop into, like, while you're walking down the street. You're going as hard tickets. For people that might be, I could ask everybody this really, newer now, or just starting, or maybe just started playing live before COVID. I've met quite a few of these musicians lately. What do you say to them? Is there an educational component? I mean, you can't obviously take the time to do that, but it's like, what's the response when they're like, hey, I just want to play your venue?
I'm hitting that a lot, especially this summer, because our summer is fairly open, and I think when people look at a calendar, they just go, oh wow, they only have a few things in August.
Right.
Why don't they book me?
Right.
Because even though I'm not technically an educator, it's always been really important for me. I've always worked with development clients, lots of baby bands. That's something just like personally I've really taken as my mission in my 30+ years in this business. I know, I just hit the 30+. I started when I was 22, and I'm now 53, do the math, so there it is. But I really just always found that like we're better together, and so we kind of, as we all, just in every circle, especially in the entertainment industry and abroad, like one person might get that script sold or that song sold or whatever, and then you try and elevate everybody along with you. So in that way, I feel like we are responsible for educating and helping each other kind of just as a premise of trying to help humanity, right? I mean, why are we in the arts if we're not really believers in trying to, you know, collaborate and entertain other people? And really, I believe in the other. So it is a bit hard right now when I get some very young bands who never toured, they don't really understand the financial aspect of, you know, they just see it just empty room and it should be used. And I also feel it should be used, but so I will actually do my due diligence and explain, you know, this is our capacity. I'll explain kind of what a house nut is. House nut is. That's kind of just it's the vernacular that a lot of rent venues use. That basically just kind of explains the basic finances to open their doors for a show. So and it's usually just the real basics. It's how much is the sounds, the staff, the ticketing. I mean, ticketing can also be parceled out and separate, but you know, just to open your doors, the liability of having a group of people in your room, all of those things. Each venue has kind of their own threshold of what it costs to open up their doors. And when you're a venue like the Cedar that relies entirely now, currently, because we do not have a development department, we do still have some residual grants that we're working with. And we also benefited some from the shuttered venue operating grants that went towards actually like making sure that the building didn't crumble in the last couple of years. You know, so you explain people, well, I would love to book you. So then I ask those questions back, like, where have you played before? How many people have showed up? How many tickets have you sold? Okay, if you can only bring out 30 or 40 people, I know that our theater can only max do comfortably 2 band bills, but really we'll stretch to 3 band bills. If you partner with a few other bands, could you kind of collaboratively come up with enough to hit the point where we can all, you know, we can cover ourselves, you can cover yourself. So the Cedar relies entirely on ticket sales. We have a little bit of concessions, but you know, we're an all ages, fully accessible theater. We, unlike a lot of clubs that may have, you know, food service or hard alcohol or other layers that they can actually make some revenue. And then in COVID, and just kind of going back to what Jessica was saying about kind of, you know, the difference of like local and national. I mean, one of the things that I thought was just phenomenal in the last couple of years, especially the summer of 2020, was how just versatile and innovative people got with performing. And it was like this first opportunity. It was really the first opportunity now in my 30 plus years where I felt like there was kind of this pause and like, how do we do this differently? I mean, I did a couple backyard concert series for people. I was trying to help people with whatever the online things that were happening. And that feels like it's still kind of carrying into now where I have people say like, oh, well, no, I don't want to play at your theater. I'll probably make more money in someone's backyard. Or, you know, it's just, to me, I feel like the more experience I have, the less I know. I mean, really, it's just, and really, but that's also what humanity is. And like, we are in an ever evolving, I mean, we have to stay open and we have to really keep, and I'm really grateful for this discussion because this is how we figure it out. We have to collaborate and figure out our next steps because it's kind of a mess out there, I will say, but am I answering any?
No, this is wonderful. You're posing a question that I don't think to ask. I don't know why. For Jessica and you, Mary, Joe, are you doing hybrid shows at all? Are you doing like streaming and live or for other venues?
We did.
Yeah, not now.
Really, when we were literally shuttered, there was so much more live streaming, and there was kind of, I am really, I am deeply wedded to the live experience. It's kind of, for me, it's it's why I'm always been in this supportive role of, I mean, and I know I'm biased, sorry, writers and everything else, but like, I think the best form of human expression is live music, because you have people who don't know each other, people come together. I'm talking from the audience, artists, all of it. We come together, we witness something that's fleeting and beautiful and raw and live, and people experience this one moment in time, and then people go away. I mean, it's just truly, I think it's like the essence of being a human being.
So you don't think people could do that in their living room with their other friends? I don't understand.
So I'm not a fan of kill live.
I was gonna say though, like we, and I totally agree. I mean, first of all, live streaming, if you want it to look good, if you want it to sound good, it's freaking expensive.
Yeah.
So let's be honest.
It's expensive.
Anybody can stream something on their phone, plop it on a tripod, hi. But if you're an artist, especially a musician, you want to sound good. Like audio is a huge part of that. And there is that intimacy, that inherent connection when you're physically in the same space with someone and you're experiencing something without the distraction of, your fridge humming in the other room or whatever. So, we did try to do hybrid shows. I think the problem, at least for us, was expensive, and you just don't. It wasn't a revenue generator. And I will even now have people say, well, we want to do a live stream component in addition to our live performance, and I kind of say no. Because you're sort of devaluing the live experience. People are not going to buy a ticket to your live performance if they know they can just plop on their couch and watch something whenever. And so kind of like you, I'm a big advocate of getting people back out there and connecting and performing in front of people, and having that connection. But it is interesting though how a lot of artists, because we all have the technology now, we all learned how to do it during the pandemic. We all realized, oh, it's not that hard. So a lot of people, I find that a lot of artists ask for that, but I really discourage it because it just was not cost effective. And if people want to do, a outdoor backyard performance or, house concert in their living room or whatever, yes, I had a host concert series in Northfield for years because I couldn't really get people to come to Northfield to play a venue because people in Northfield wouldn't buy a ticket. Maybe that's hopefully changed, but I could get people to come to my house and throw 20, 30 bucks at an artist to see that artist in a room of like-minded people, which was amazing. It elevated the artist, it elevated the experience, it brought music to a small town. But so I do think I'm all for artists being creative and finding whatever space they can perform in. When you're representing a venue, though, it gets really tricky because we also are responsible for getting the utilities paid, getting the mortgage on the building paid, getting the real estate insurance paid. So, it's hard for us because I think Mary and I are both, all of us here love live music. We all love live performance. But for a venue, you're really having to come at it from a totally different perspective because it unfortunately is all about what's the bottom line.
I will say, just because there's always another perspective on things, but especially the Cedar is 100% invested in access.
For sure.
For everyone. And that is, I will say, there's a day in the winter where, the city, the world is short-staffed. No one had really even plowed out the sidewalks were completely covered. There's no, I was just like, if I needed to come out and see a show, and I was in a wheelchair, and there was no way. So in those ways, I do feel like if you can have a hybrid situation where there is a live streaming,
sure,
of course, but it is in our capitalistic society, those live streaming sources it's always ultimately, it's just such an expense, it really is. And then there's also those protections of how long is this going to be out there?
Yeah, do you have licensing?
Well, that's why I started asking the question.
Will Zuckerberg shut you down?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Carnage, I'm sorry.
No, everything is counted. Everything is allowable.
What did you say earlier? I know everything and I know nothing. That's the theme of this. Have you done hybrid shows out there? Have you done shows where there is a streaming component and a live component?
Yeah, I think I did something last year at Hook and Ladder. That they kind of did
Yeah,
that.
that's right. They were doing it for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I could bring this question to everyone here again. Like, what I'm not worried, but wondering about is the economic component. Because I've done deals where I've had things where people are just like, oh, by the way, we're live streaming the day before the show. And then a manager is like, no. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, no, too, because there is a level of protection. There is the copyright question. There's the monetary question. Not that it's all about that. You know, those deals are going to look, usually when I'm doing those smaller venues, it's going to be like an open donation thing. So it usually doesn't turn out to be that great economically. What was the geo-tracking? What was the term that we used for 5 minutes? Like they were trying to like limit how many, like where the live stream would go.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool technology, but I haven't heard anything about it for several months, for years, probably years.
That's
Yeah,
terrifying.
I remember that.
Yeah.
That 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it,
It's
there's
like-
a few months where I was so grateful for the ability to be able
Oh,
to
of course.
see, you know?
Oh, for sure, as a listener,
Right,
as a
sure.
fan, as
Yeah.
a consumer of art,
Right.
but
I saw that real quick.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What was
There's
yours?
also,
Oh,
you know,
go
that disconnection, the screen, you know,
Yeah.
it's just, it's.
Yeah, you probably didn't, I mean, this is hybrid. We're on the screen right now.
The
But
unstable
there's millions of people watching this.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Mom.
You probably, I mean, you did that one show, Look at Ladder, but you've also done streaming.
I did quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. I want to hear about that experience. What were the surprises? I'm sure, I presume there were some surprises for you personally in your career.
My biggest surprise came with a lot of artists I knew who didn't know what to do with a live stream. They were like, I can't perform in front of a camera. It's
Right.
like, you do it all the time.
Mhm.
You know, like in front of people with their phones, people, it's the same people on the other side. You just have to do it in a room by yourself and feel like there's people there, because there are people there. So for me, it was, I don't want to like brag or anything, but to me, it was just like, let's do it. It's a live show. We have to like, and before the pandemic hit, one of my main things was, I started adopting a results versus numbers type of point of view. It didn't matter how many people were there. It mattered what the impact was that you had on the people who were actually there.
Mhm.
So when I changed that from my mind state, you know, my last year and a half of touring was great. And then I just transferred that same idea
Mhm.
to live streaming. Anybody who's watching is going to get a good live show, and I just performed like there was people in the room, because that's kind of how you have to do it anyway. 500, 5 million, 15, no matter how many people are there, you have to perform for the people.
Yeah.
So to me, it was easy for me to switch into it. The difficult part was trying to find the place where I would get the most exposure. Like I tried IG Live, and that was okay. Then I did some private, a couple of agencies hit me up, and
Mhm.
because they saw that I was doing like online teaching. So, with McPhail Center for Music, they were like the cutting edge when it came to teaching online. So like immediately they went to teaching, and then I was online, and I was like, okay, so I already had experience, doing stuff on camera, and then I would like post little videos of stuff that I was doing with kids, and then everybody started hitting me up like, oh, you're still performing. I was like, yeah, come on.
Nice.
So then finding the right place where you got the right exposure was the biggest thing. Then I went to Facebook Live, and that was where I got the most. Like, I had videos that had like 5,000 views in 2 days type of thing, and it was like, this is great.
Did you ask for Venmo, or, I mean, how was the?
Yeah, I would say to people, here's my Venmo, here's my PayPal, or here's my Cash App. So during that time, I got everything. I got Zelle, everything that you can do on your phone, I got it.
Mhm.
And I ended up making a decent amount of money a few times. And Facebook Live was the spot.
Yeah.
Then I saw what the DJs were doing. I saw the DJs had the ability to get direct sound for their thing. They weren't getting their sound from the camera. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna figure that out. So now I have like all 3 ways. I have like 3 or 4 different ways I can make it so that my sound is good because I studied it. And that also turned me into somebody that people wanted to book for live stuff too, because I had the ability to make it sound good. I had the ability to make it look good.
You knew what you were doing.
Yeah, so it was that was it. It was kind of like saying to myself, this is the new norm, so I have to do it like this. And if I don't, then nobody will care because everybody's attention span is so short. You know, you're not out there doing your thing and staying active and putting videos out or, you know, putting pictures out of you doing stuff or anything like that. People are kind of gonna, right. So for me, nobody ever forgot me because I was always out there. And for me too, as far as like I saw the DJs encountering issues where they would play copyrighted material and then they would get their streams cut off and stuff like that. Or even rappers who had the worst live performance stuff. Like I was just like, oh, what are you doing? Just hit me up, I'll help you out, you know. But it got to a point where some of them were getting cut off too because of pre-recorded music or copyright. They were using people's beats. But that wasn't a problem for me because I make all my own beats live. So it's just like, I just had all of these things that just kept me in a good spot. I was like, y'all should stop complaining and just holler at me. I'll help you out.
Are you still doing the live streams?
Not as much because I don't have to.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I'm getting booked for stuff.
So what, there's no preference there, because I have had artists, I think we touched on this a bit, I have had artists who are like, I'm going out 3 days a month. Like I'm not doing any more than that because I can stay home Friday nights, I have a regular stream, and I'm making a couple $1,000 a week.
Yeah.
So I'm like, really? Like, okay. Like, I get it. Like, why would you go out? And one of the questions, the most obvious questions, might as well ask you now, is it's expensive out there right now, I hear, to tour, yeah. Like, how are you adapting to that? Do you have anything coming up?
Well, I haven't necessarily been touring, but I've been
Well, I mean, going out.
a lot of spot
Having
dates.
to go.
Lots of spot dates have been popping up. And again,
You get flown in sometimes.
Since I've stayed busy during that whole time, I've been getting a lot of people hitting me up saying, you know, we got a plane ticket for you. And I'm like, let's do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Fly out,
you got the plane ticket.
Come back. You know, so for me, I will say that I was pretty blessed because I never really stopped. I was doing some live stream stuff, and then I was doing the teaching, and then I started doing backyard stuff or house parties and stuff or house shows when those started turning into stuff. And now I don't necessarily need to book a tour because I have people saying, I'll fly you out.
Because we pivoted so much. There's so much in the, you know.
Yeah, right, yeah, the way
There's
that
so
we're-
many more stages.
And that's something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the best way to put it. It's like we as artists needed to figure out how to access all these different stages because, you know, at that point, you know, at one point, Jay-Z was no bigger than us.
Right.
Yeah.
He had to perform in his living room.
Exactly.
He was gonna do it too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, Snoop Dogg had to perform in his living room.
West is PJs.
Exactly. You know, so it was like.
He still does it.
I know.
It's even the playing field a little bit for a lot of us who saw it that way.
Yeah.
And the people who didn't see it that way were just like, oh, I guess I'm done. And then I was like, nah, you don't have to be.
Right.
You know, just figure it out. And I just, that was one of my things. I was like, I'm not giving up because I love performing live and that's where I feel like I shine the most. And people know that, which is why it never stopped. You know, so.
Very cool, very good. As an agent, David, are you having these conversations with artists where there's more of a strategy because just gas prices are expensive? I know your philosophy on gas prices. We talked about that. Quick complaint. Sorry, that's an inside joke. But like, are you having these conversations? Is it kind of like determining the budgets?
Not as much as I would have thought. I think in general, there is, with some of my artists, usually the more veteran artists, there is an element of cautiousness that maybe wasn't there 2 years ago, but it's kind of overall in general, let's make sure this is not always about money. It's just, let's do this in a smart way and make sure we have a good impact. But I still do have some younger artists who are not concerned about the overall, they want to get out, they want to hustle, and they know they're going to take a hit if they're going to new markets and things like that, and they're ready to do it. And of course, I think as people have been pivoting, so many people have found other income streams during the pandemic that can help prop up what they're doing. And a lot of it's in that, educational vein or doing,
Collaborations.
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
But,
collaboration.
but so there is that element too that, or even just people who are like teaching instruments, like, well, I can do that. They have a video set up for that now. So if I go on the road, I'm not going to miss any lessons. I can still give my 5 lessons that day. I can still make the same amount of money. I'm in a hotel instead of at home.
Right.
And it's not as big of a deal. I think it's more for the people that know they're going to go out for a month and there's going to be just these underlying, their house nut that they need to make every day on the tour to stay in the black.
Yeah, I love that. The 3 of us had dinner, Jessica, Barry, and I, the other day, and you said something. I know, I'm sorry to interrupt. I was trying to get these people to myself. I wanted to just hear them talk about running a venue. You said something, Mary, that's stuck with me. And I've been doing this for 20 years, and I don't know why I never thought of this, but the triple win-win, tell me if I'm wrong, situation.
Win-win.
Well, why don't you say it? Because if I say it, I'm just gonna barf it out. It's not gonna make as much sense.
Well, I just might.
If you don't mind.
Sit on the mountain here, but I've always really felt that, like, when I was an agent, presenter, audience, there's essentially it's a 3-tiered scenario, right? I mean, there's the booker, the presenter, promoter, whatever, the person that's actually the host, however you want to look at it, the artist, the audience. And so, we can we all have that vantage point. I mean, we all have been one of them, or some of us more, I've only been 2, I've never been an artist. Everyone is
I play a mean ukulele.
Okay.
You'll never see me live.
What a major coup.
But I mean, just like any, pyramid, prism, triangle, whatever, I mean, all the parts matter in order for it to be supported. So I've always approached, and I've, in the buying and selling of talent, I have always said, okay, so I know what my artist needs to just cover their gas and their expenses on the road. So I'll have that. I'll find out what the presenter needs with what they need to just open up their doors. Now, how are we going to make this like the most accessible to the audience? So the Cedar, for instance, I'll just use an example that's coming up. That's been really interesting because I still get it, and I feel like it's this education piece that I'm just like, please bear with us, and just like, if you can do it. But we have Femi Kuti and his 13-piece family band, basically. It's this legendary legacy band from Nigeria. They're starting their US and Canadian tour. There's just no way of getting around that large of a tour without the most, and really the Cedar's mission is to like really make sure that the ticket prices are the most bearable as possible. They're $50.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no way to get around the cost of this large. And I've been hearing so much grumbling of like, oh, I would love to see that it's so large. So, we're, trying to figure out different ways that we can discount it, but like, and even really we're going into it almost as a loss because it's just, I mean, this is truly like, this is royalty coming to our stage. And so, but like, just as that example, but like, there really is no other price point that it could be based on the capacity of our venue and what the artist needs. And, again, that win-win-win. But then we also will have shows, and this is where I will ask agents now, because I will say that that's one thing that's really come post these new days of ours, post new days, does that even make sense? That doesn't even make sense. That doesn't make sense.
Tomorrow.
It's all absurd.
Yeah.
In this new time of ours, if I have an agent just randomly quote me and say, well, they did this back in 2019 or even in the beginning of 2020, and they sold it out, let's take that price point and then just let's add, raise the ticket prices or let's raise the guarantee. And as soon as I hear that, I know immediately that that's someone that just does not get that paradigm, because I'll say, well, I don't know where you've been for the last couple of years, but this is where I'm really sensitive also to the fact that we are, I would imagine predominantly based in the Twin Cities, but you haven't even asked me how things are in Minneapolis. You haven't asked how my venue is, like what's happened here. Like there's been no discourse around how are you in this very moment. And really, that's essential conversation starter. I mean, we all have something to learn from each other about, we've all lost something. We've all been traumatized. We've all had something happen to us in the last couple of years where we are starting on new ground. So let's start there, let's start at that conversation piece of like, how are you doing? How's your venue doing? How's your artist doing? How's the audience doing? Like how much can you bear?
Yeah.
And it takes time, and I get that when you're I'm not pointing at you as examples, because I know you're very different, but
I was about to get
I know when you're routing a national tour and representatives really are that's a rare part of our industry now. It's, and there's also so many self-managed artists who have figured out how to pivot. So to have representation, to me, sorry, gents, but that requires, and just like me, I mean, it's more responsibility on our part to really figure out what is going to work for all of those three parties.
Yeah.
How is this going to be a win-win-win? And if I get that feeling that like that person who's selling me that show just doesn't even care and just hike up, and I'm just worried about this piece of this, frankly, I'm more and more comfortable to just say, best of luck to you. I mean, we also happen to be in one of the most competitive major markets and in the country. I mean, it is truly one of the most competitive markets in the entire country, because so many people have figured out a way to find a stage. I mean, how many breweries are now concert venues, I mean, that goes against my grain, because I also know that music doesn't really always sound that good when there's all that equipment being bounced around, all that, but like,
I think that's part of the paradigm shift that's happening, though, because there's always been those people, and it's not always agents, sometimes it's the artists driving that, or the managers who, they don't care what happens after the show.
right.
They care,
Exactly.
they care about if they get what they want. And I don't do this conversation anymore because I don't work with artists like that, but having that conversation with an artist where you say, okay, maybe you don't care if you ever come back here,
Right.
but I have to keep working with this person.
Yeah.
And if the show goes great for you and the venue is really unhappy, then I don't get to work with them anymore. And
Sure.
and how does it work for you when you're trying to build your brand if you just go from town to town burning bridges,
Well, and to Carnage's point of the whole, you may only have 15 people in the room, but you don't know those 15 people. And those 15 people, if you move them and if you're really real with them, I actually have a really fun story, but I mean, it's only if you guys want to hear it, but I got into like almost a fist fight with Jeff Tweedy. It's very dominant. Yes. I mean, but it was never this.
This is gonna live on the.
I know, yes,
I know.
Jeff,
Jeff. I'm sure he's one of the millions.
Maybe Staples has truly made him a new man, so I'll say, if anyone wants to ask that, but that was based on that. I presented a show with Wilco in their early days where only 20 people showed up, and he came out and yelled at the 20 people.
Oh,
nice.
And he was so disgusted, like, don't you know who we are? This is truly before me.
But they're there. Those people were there.
I was, as the presenter,
Who were they
losing
supposed to
all
be?
this money and just like, how is it? I actually, I pulled him by the ear and I just said, those 20 people, there was 5 of them were NPR hosts. Several were writers. There was like so much volume and so much access in those 20 people. I mean, they also, you know, they were seasoned, you know, critics and whatnot. They kind of loved being yelled at by him. You know? But from like my point of view, I was like, that is, someone's forgotten that golden rule lesson of what you said, of you don't know who is, you know,
Can't do that.
who's,
No.
so.
Reminds me of what's his face.
Give you more, because there's a lot of what's his face.
I was,
There's a lot of what's his face.
There's a lot of what's his faces in our
Yeah.
past.
I was on Brian Oak's show
Okay.
and this came up, and apparently, he's done some other bad stuff. I just knew he was a jerk. But, from Wisconsin, you know, and then they split, and then the one guy had a name, and then he just got nothing.
Oh, the Bodines.
Yeah, the Bodines.
Oh, that what's his face.
The guy from the Bodines was trying to get Craig and I to work with him, and, you know, he had Sam Lanas, and he was making okay money, and he wrote a lot of good songs.
And John Lennon of the Bodines.
And so we usually didn't do this, but we did this thing where we're like, okay, we're gonna book you a show in Minneapolis so that we can meet you and we can see the performance and we can say hello and all this stuff. And, you know, there was not a lot of interest. There was, you know, we're shopping it around, finally got a place. And I met him and he was outside, and I walked up and I shook his hand, and as he's shaking my hand, he says, "There's no green room here." And he starts swearing, and I'm like, dude, I talked to almost every venue in town, and this is where you're at. And if this is how you're gonna handle.
There's a sound system.
Yeah, there was a sound guy.
There's a sound
It's a
person.
stage, you had a stage.
Yeah,
exactly.
There is a stage.
That's another big issue
Yeah.
with us as artists not knowing what our popularity is or what our draw is versus not in any particular, like all of that has to be changed, and all of that had to be changed. You know, I've seen people come on stage, especially rappers are really good for it, come on stage and just be like, yell at people or like put on a 1/3 of a performance. And, you know, I had a guy who I was with one time, he was like, since y'all are sitting back there, we were in Winona. He's like, since y'all are sitting back there, I'm gonna just sit on my chair and do my whole set. And I was like, I'm never taking you anywhere again. It's just,
I'm from Winona, if that makes sense.
you gotta play Winona right.
Yeah.
If you go out there, you gotta make it work. And he didn't figure it out. I did, which is why I still play it. But we as artists, and if you're watching artists, you're not guaranteed a crowd just because you go somewhere. You know, like I've been places and played in front of 7 people and made $300 in merch.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you just have to do it right. And that's one of the things that, you know, maybe y'all as people who book venues, I don't know, you could have told that artist that, like, come in here and do, you know, or the ticket sales aren't really that high for this show, but, you know, if you do what you're supposed to do,
Right.
I'm gonna hold your hand a little bit here.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, if you do what you're supposed to do, you're gonna have a great show, no matter how many people were there, 717, 700.
I've seen some confusion amongst my, let's just say, older heritage artists of who is responsible for promotion. I've always had the adage, I'm like, basically not as a cop-out, but I'm like, really, my job is to get you the best show possible. You know, let's start there on the canvas. But everyone else has to be, including me to a degree, has to be involved in the promotion of a show. I actually did want to kind of ask that, especially Jessica, because you come from that, you sound like you were going to say something.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I know you know
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
but when, I think when artists are going through the data, and they should be keeping their data, and they're looking at that 7 people, 300 in merch, that means go back.
That's what we always get.
That means you made an impact, and there's something you can build.
Yeah.
It's obviously you don't want to do another 7-person show there, but there were 7 super excited people. How can you turn that into, you know, 40 excited people the next time and 100 excited people the time after that? And a lot of people, they look at that 7 and they, you know, but you could play to 100 people and do $100 in merch, and what's happening there? Nobody cares.
Yeah, then you don't have the engagement, absolutely. I was gonna ask something, but we only got like 12 minutes, and I wanna open this up for questions. There's quite a few of you in the room. We're just taking questions in the room,
People
right?
can type
Oh, they can?
questions in the
Oh,
chat.
well, then we better definitely take,
Okay.
can we go to 12:30? No, I'm kidding. Well, then we better start taking questions. Does anyone, I'll start of course in the room, anyone have any specific questions for any of the panelists? Anyone, or anything?
Or even cry.
I don't know that much, but I can try. Any questions? Yes. Oh, and say your name. Say your name.
My name's Scarlett Woods
Oh, from Brainerd.
from Braden.
We met yesterday.
I guess, what, maybe all of you can answer this, but what is some of the things that really stand out with the artists that you represent and work with?
Well, I was just gonna say, piggybacking on what these guys were talking about, obviously if you're a name, and it's guaranteed you're gonna sell it, yeah, that's exciting. But I love working with artists that understand that they have a responsibility and investment in the successful appearance, just like we do. So they're doing promotions, we're doing promotions. They do a show where, we actually have a artist who the first time national artist, first time they came through our venue, it was a guarantee. So they got paid, they knew what they were gonna get paid. 45 people showed up. It was a total disaster financially for us, but those 45 people had the most amazing experience of their life. They all emailed us and said, oh my God, that was amazing. Please bring this person back, blah, blah, blah. Next time that, the artist wants to come back, they were totally willing to negotiate a different sort of deal so that the venue didn't get hurt again, but they knew they could grow their audience. And now they're coming back their third time this fall, and each and every time. So again, being willing to, don't expect like an amazing success the first time out. It takes time. I mean, I wish we all could be overnight successes, but make that investment, do due diligence with promotion, be willing to work with the venue. I feel like as a venue, I want to help artists. I mean, that's why I got into this industry in the first place. I was actually an MMC board member for many years. I got into booking music because I wanted to make sure musicians were getting paid and not just, having a tip jar passed around. But that same point, like understand that venues and bookers and agents, like we all care about you. We all really want to support art and music making. But you guys need to make that, like there's no magic wand. It's not like, oh, I got an agent, oh, I found a date, oh, I've got a gig. Like you have to make that investment too. So I guess that would be my, realize it's a relationship and a collaboration and let's work together.
I love that. It echoes what I was saying, what I was trying to quote you on, the win-win-win. I love that image. I'm just so in love with that image of the three wins. I think of myself as the artist side, and then of course, or management, both. And then obviously the venue, and of course the audience. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you're doing it for. Whether there's 45 people in a 350 capacity room or 350 in a 3-bed.
And I will dare say that it's not just developing. I mean, it's even really seasoned artists that you kind of really can't ever really stop being engaged in your own art. I mean, artists need to be protected, but you have to be engaged. And
it's that authenticity. Like you have to really care because the fans sense that, the venues sense it. Like we all, we all feel that.
You give best to that being real.
It's about paying bills, but it's not about the money, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Are there any questions online?
Not yet.
Okay. just want to make sure I don't, well, I mean, there's millions of people. I thought there'd be at least one question. Anyone else have a question in here?
I know I'm on the panel.
That's fine. That should say anything.
So this would be for the people who book venues.
Okay.
What is the best way an artist can promote their own show? That's a great to me, that's been the biggest thing. I've been booked for a show and then people are, texting me and calling me and almost driving past my house, throwing letters at my house saying, why aren't you promoting? Right. It's like, I don't live in Montana. Right. I can say I'm doing a show in Montana online a couple times or do a little video or something, but what is the best way? Because a lot of times promoters and venues will really, really, really be on our backs about how to promote our show when we're not there.
I want to just jump in real quick and say, because you asked this question of them, haha. Now you guys have to answer this.
No, I
This is
actually,
No, I want
if I had booked a show with you, and a couple weeks in, you said, and say it was 2 months out, and you, after we put it on sale, we agreed how it was gonna go on sale, when it was gonna be announced, all that. And in a couple weeks, you checked in with me and said, how's it going? And I said, we only have 2 tickets sold out of the, like in the Cedar's case of 400 cap seated, 645 dance hall. This isn't really looking too great, and for 2 weeks to only have, so thank you for checking in first.
Exactly.
Do you have graphics available that can be translated in all the different forms? You've got your Instagram screen, you've got your banners, you've got, that really helps. And that's something you can do from afar, is just have your own assets ready to go to be able to send. I love when people say, can you send me your press list? Because I know you may not have time to reach out to those radio stations or those writers, but if you could just let me know which of these writers or these radio hosts or stations you think might actually work with me, I'll press on that. If you don't have any support, But the more that you kind of check in and we just have a respectful dialogue, I will guarantee you, and I'm gonna speak for Jessica and every talent booker across the country in every different size venue. But when you actually really check in with them and see how is my show doing in your place, they will roll up their sleeves and dive in with you because they know you're engaged.
Exactly.
I mean, Annie, Luke, I've had the opportunity to work with them when I was booking Ice House for a couple. I mean, you both were really great at that. I felt like there was, we were collaborating on your shows, because I hope I said, from the get-go, this is a DIY venue. So I'm gonna need your help and,
Setting up those expectations.
yeah, it's really clear communication.
Yeah, and again, it's provide us with the assets, provide us with graphics, get on your social media. Okay,
Yeah.
Your followers might all be in Minneapolis and maybe you have a show in Montana, but you promote to those fans in Minneapolis, they're gonna be talking about it. They maybe have friends in
Tell your
Montana or
friends
whatever.
and-
Tell your friends. I mean,
You know,
anything social media totally helps, networking totally helps. But again, that engagement, like artists who are checking in with me to say, where are ticket sales at? Or I want a weekly ticket report. And then I see that boost and I know they're working on it. But when I go on an artist's social media and there's not one mention of the fact that they have a gig coming up in Minneapolis at my venue, that pisses me off.
Yeah.
We made it, and then they're like, well, how come tickets aren't selling? I know I'm putting money into boosted things. I know we're promoting, but it really does have to be that collaboration, and we really do need to work together. And especially again, if you're not the Rolling Stones, you got a lot of work to do, and be willing to do that work. And the venues are going to appreciate it, your fans are going to appreciate it, and again, it gets back to everybody's going to end up being really happy. I always say making the artist happy, making the audience happy. Obviously, I wasn't thinking about the third component, which is me.
But that's probably gonna be,
Because I always say, my goal is that the artists are happy and that the audiences are happy, and it's like, well, wait a second, no, right?
I'm serious.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, realize that, we're all in this together, and we will work with you. We're willing to work with you, but you've got to, step up too.
Any advice to artists on how to quantify that on their social media accounts, selling the venue and giving them a reason to come out again after they may have been working from home for 2 years and getting back out of the bedroom into the world, off of Instagram, into the world? How do we as artists quantify that or give them a reason to come out to the venues, regardless of what artist is there?
I think people are craving that experience. Everybody, there's a difference between, we all want to get back to living and experiencing again. And, I don't know if it's quantifying it, but it's certainly justifying it and it's inspiring it. People want to get back out together. People want to go see live music. People want to have that connection. Life sucks right now and it's been really hard. And, we are I feel like I'm going to cry. To be in a room again, experiencing this thing that we all collectively love, and that's why we're in this room right now. And whether it's with one other person or 500 other people, like that's that thing. And oh my God, it's still there. And that spark is still there. So yeah, I mean, I think if you're passionate about your craft, your fans are going to be passionate about your craft and they're going to follow you where you're going. They're going to be there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, to your point, like, I don't know if it's about quantifying.
Yeah.
I think really right now, I will say, and we may be some rare, you know, thought on in this industry, but it is so much more quality over quantity to me right now. And it's that intentional invitation. I'm gonna tell you, I am just coming out of my living room, you know, selfie, you know, land, but I'm now wanting to come and engage with you. So it's
Being in the Parkway Theater is really fun. Being in Cedar
Yeah,
Culture
exactly.
Theater is really fun, you know?
Hyping up the venue too, yeah,
Yeah.
not just the show, but hey, I'm really excited to play this venue. Maybe I've never played it before, at least I haven't played it since COVID, whatever it is. We're about up to 12
Okay.
here. Do we have time for one more question, Joanna?
Sure.
We do.
Well, and the next thing is lunch. So like if
As
there
long as
are
we're-
questions.
I'm
happy
yeah,
to
we're
answer
happy to-
questions.
Yeah.
You all right with that?
I'm not
Yeah.
on the radio for 3 hours.
I mean, this,
Just a quick one about, because you mentioned boosting, and so I often wonder about the practical results of doing something like a Facebook ad like that. I feel like, do we see that makes a difference? Do we know for sure that
See, and I would say
Okay, that-
sometimes it does.
but
sometimes,
it
yeah.
does kind of depend on
It
the
depends on-
demographic. I mean,
demographic?
yeah.
And I was actually thinking more about when Carnage, you were talking about like if you're playing Montana or Colorado, that idea of like you can like do a
Totally.
focused
Yep, you can
thing,
target-
like a region.
Yeah, you can, yeah, so that can be really helpful,
That
for
is
sure.
great. So
Well,
Yeah,
the idea of like, I'm coming to Montana, how often do I come to Montana?
And I mean, you know,
It's like really good.
I will tell you, since we're talking about Montana, and that's, you know, I lived there for many years as
No.
far as. But I will, some of those kind of oddball, you know, vacuous, you don't even know if there's, invariably, there's also like, there's a killer community radio station that has the voice. So like, again, asking the presenter, what's your voice? What is your voice here? It might not be social media, it's KGLT.
Yeah,
it's out of
exactly.
Bozeman, you know, it's, they will know,
Yeah.
know, because they wouldn't have booked you or even given you their platform.
So the reverse, when you're talking to a venue, and I have had this happen, a ticketed show, very recently, and sales are not doing well, and you reach out to the venue and you say, what's your media list? Blah, 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 do you want to do a contest? Do you want to do this? And they're just like, yeah, you know, we don't really have a media list, we don't have, then first of all, as an agent, you realize, oops, I screwed up. But those,
Was it a bona fide music venue?
yeah,
It's not a brewery somewhere?
no,
Okay.
no.
Sorry, don't mean to be, I just like.
Well, I think part of the problem is because of the way things have been, there have been a lot of, overplay situations where you have bigger artists going to smaller venues. And, there's venues are just not all cut from the same cloth. Some people are really professional venues and some people are just not as much, and it's pulling teeth to get some of those things. But yeah, if you're working with a venue and they don't have a media list, or they
Or just even like, call my friends at this radio station.
Right,
you
yeah, it
know,
doesn't even
or,
have to
you know, this is, I mean, I will say, if they don't have an answer for you,
yeah,
you may have not placed your artist in the best of hands. I mean, even just some kind of way to say, and that's, and that's where it's really then your due diligence to call your artist and say, this is gonna be a real, I don't know. And I'm gonna be forthright about that and say, this might be a total gamble, but let's get our expectations in line so that,
exactly.
That's important.
so you don't fire me after this one day.
Well, and it also goes both
know.
ways. I mean,
Pull
I
a Jeff
certainly
Tweedy.
have shows that I've booked through an agent versus directly with the artist. And the sense is that the agent, well, I booked the show, my work here is done.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting the information I need. I'm not able to give that information to the rest of my staff. And in the meantime, I've got 15 other things I need to be working on. And so that show maybe doesn't get the attention that it certainly deserves, and that as a venue, we had every intention of giving it to, but it's like, I have to move on to something else now. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So, it's like everybody involved has a responsibility. And if you have a question or you're not getting the information that you think you should be getting, well, then find out who else can I maybe try to get. Like, don't just give them, well, who else can I ask? Or maybe this is not the answer I expected. Maybe I asked the wrong person, and so, and I don't mean to make it all, at this point, any of you are going to be like, I never want to be a musician. I'm never going to it's too much work.
Yeah.
But the point is, like, it is a lot of work.
It is.
But there's a lot of people that are there to help you, and there's a lot of tools available, and there's a lot of resources. And circling back to like what David had said, I don't think I've ever felt like anybody has ever withheld information from me. I got into this business very organically. I didn't expect to be a radio DJ. I didn't expect to be a music booker. It all came from a place of just loving music and taking advantage of opportunities when they came my way. But, I didn't go to college for this. I didn't have any sort of internship or anything, but I asked a lot of questions, and I found people that were willing to share that information with me. And that's one of the things I love about the Minnesota Music Coalition, is that we're a collective of shared, like-minded people who want to share those tools and ideas and resources, and feel free to ask those questions. And if I don't know the answer, I'll find a person who does know the answer.
Yeah.
And so, it's unfortunate if you say you feel like there's been a paradigm shift. I guess then I feel fortunate that that's my experience that I've had always, is that I can figure this out because people will help me along the way, and people will answer those questions. And so, ask the questions, because people do want to help.
I have something to add to that, actually. Kathy and I just started a management firm a couple of years ago at the beginning of COVID. And the reason we did it is because we were producing some bands, and we were having a hard time getting representation. Sure. And you just don't walk into filming and have them pick you up.
Right.
And so what we did, our whole thing is building the structure. So like you're saying, not having information, right? So like when we book a show, everything goes out with the 19th card, and everybody fills in all the data that they have, and it gets pushed around. And we find that the more you build your structure, especially the artist, when you're out there working with people, the more you have tools, the more you get out of the show. And the easier it is to promote. Like, somebody always comes up and says, hey, there's a radio station or a college station that does this interview, call so-and-so. You might not get it, but you have those sources to go to if you ask the question. I think that I've always got to have the tools to create the question.
It is, as having this in your, at the ready.
Yeah.
And then you can actually, like, once the template is there, like, say it is a radio, or it's a Facebook invitation, you just modify that per that market or per that room, so.
I'm amazed at present company excluded, how often the talent the talent buyer, promoter, somebody in charge of the venue, the gatekeeper, doesn't offer anything. And you have to dig as an artist or an artist representative. You have to dig in. I'm like, why isn't this just fun? We should be having this conversation early on. I think particularly now. My biggest takeaway from this panel is the level of intimacy that we all work in the small part of this world, in this part of this world, and now it's become even more intimate. Bigger conversations have to happen. I'm taking this as a positive.
Absolutely.
As a positive. And with that, does anybody have any pressing questions? We obviously can hang out a bit.
No, I mean, this is what it's about, right? Are most people here artists?
Yeah,
okay.
We asked at the beginning, didn't we?
Oh,
How many of you are artists? Well, I mean, more people.
Show of hands.
Okay. Oh, I missed the show of hands. Okay.
And then I asked how many people are on TikTok.
Oh,
And-
I'm gonna be.
And then-
See, and I know
And he's talking about right at this moment.
I'll get on my phone.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I cannot thank the panel enough. You all are gems in my life. I consider you all friends and really love you all. I appreciate you all. And I appreciate all of you. Some of you I know already. I can't wait to hopefully meet some of you right now. Thank you so much for being here. Without you, we wouldn't have the energy.
Yeah.
Thank you out there, millions of you out in the audience. And thank you, Joanna. Thank you so much. And Minnesota Music Coalition. Appreciate it.